Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yali Mother to all of you, and thank you for joining us for Apollo Luminaries. We hope that you are staying safe and healthy where you are. My name is Rahim Punja with the Aga Khan Education Board for USA, and I'll be your moderator today. We'd like to start by sharing a short excerpt from Maulana Hazar Imam, and for those of you who are near a screen, you can follow along. Quote, "There is no better investment that individuals, parents, and the nation can make than an investment in education of the highest possible quality. Such investments are reflected and endure in the formation of the kind of social conscience that our world so desperately needs." End quote. This is a quote that we shared last week during the first episode of Apollo Luminaries, and wanted to share it with those of you who may be new to this experience. A couple of things from this quote that we'd like to highlight. The first is this idea that Hazar Imam refers to of education as an investment. And it's something that he uses the terminology intentionally to help us to think about the long-term benefits, the long-term opportunity that awaits us. The second element here that is worth noting is this idea of highest possible quality. And while quality is an indisputable attribute, this notion of what's highest possible for the individual can vary from person to person. And so the underlying thought here and the underlying guidance here is that we each aim for what is the highest possible quality for us individually. So with that thought, let's talk about why we're here. The goal of Apollo Luminaries is to invite our very own Ismaili college students to reflect back on their high school experience and share with us the learnings and best practices that they utilized and how those decisions and activities and pursuits led to certain outcomes. And hopefully during this discussion, we can also take away some of the learnings for our own journeys ahead. This discussion here is intended for students in middle and high school along with their families, but if there are others on the call, you're more than welcome to stay and listen. And keep in mind that the individuals who are sharing their stories and sharing their journeys with us are their experiences. And so the intent here is not to replicate or to duplicate those, but just to learn and to get some inspiration from those experiences and those opportunities that these individuals have had. Additionally, if you have questions during our discussion, we ask that you please use the chat box for that. So if we can keep the chat box more for questions, that way we can continue to monitor the chat box while we're having this conversation. And if you're interested, we have one more session as part of this series. Next week, May 18th, at the same time, we'll have Insha McNojia from Vanderbilt University joining us, and she'll be talking a little bit about her experience through middle and high school. If you are interested in that conversation, we ask that you register at tinyurl.com/springep3. On that note, I'd like to introduce you to Armaan Ismail, who has graciously joined us today. Yali Madad, Armaan.
Hi, everybody. I'm Armaan Ismail. I'm from Los Angeles, California. I currently go to UC Berkeley, and I'm majoring in business administration and political economy with a minor in computer science and global poverty and practice. I went to a small private high school, graduating class of 60 kids, so really small, during my years in high school. And my fun facts are, I don't know my right from my left, and I'm also an extremely heavy sleeper. Both of those don't help me when I'm dancing. I always get called out, "Hey, Armaan, make sure you know, go left," or they tap me on my shoulder, or one time I slept through a dance performance. So clearly, I need to make sure that I keep these fun facts in check.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Armaan. So we'll be sure not to have you make any rapid movements or turns during this conversation. You can just stay seated where you are for the next hour or so, if that's all right.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So Armaan, let's take a step back and sort of time travel a bit to your journey through high school. Maybe you can start just by telling us a little bit about the dynamics of your high school in terms of the size and even how that played a role, and then talk to us a little bit about the academic pursuits that you undertook during that time.
Yeah, so like I said, I went to a really small high school called Vistamar School, which is in El Segundo, a very short way from where I live. And I moved there in the third trimester of my 9th grade, and my 9th and 10th grade were pretty universal in terms of everybody had to take a lot of the similar classes. So I was in 9th grade and I was taking most of the similar classes as everybody else. And then in 10th grade, there was an honors track and a normal track. So then I decided to take the honors track. And I took 3 honors classes during that 10th grade. And then in 11th grade was when we had a lot more freedom and we were able to take whatever classes we wanted to take, and same for the 12th grade year. So I decided to take APs and honors classes. So I took 3 APs and 3 honors classes in my junior year. And then in my senior year, I took 5 AP classes, which is pretty unheard of at my school. And I had to kind of go out of my way and pretty much beg them to let me take these classes, because there's like a four AP class cap. But I wanted to make sure that I was like getting the most out of what I was putting into my last year in high school. And I felt that like the other classes at my school wouldn't have been the most beneficial to me, and having 5 AP classes rather than maybe 6 normal classes would allow me to kind of push forward to like my best potential.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And it's interesting that you talk about kind of this course load in your senior year, which is already a very sort of busy, demanding year with applications and some of the things that we'll talk about in a few minutes. But talk to us a little bit about what was that motivation? Why did you want to push for additional APs in that final year?
Yeah, I mean, not like I said before, it's not just me wanting, like I wanted to make sure that I was putting learning the most in my last year and taking the most benefit from what I'm learning. But also is that like whatever I do, I like to do with purpose, and I like to have like a reason and something behind it, like a higher good for doing it. And I felt like taking an extra class just for taking an extra class wouldn't have been as beneficial as me taking a harder class and pushing myself and really learning and getting like the content out of it. Got
it. Okay. Tell us a little bit more. What other academic activities, took up your time?
Yeah, so I was part of this program at my school called Morning Meeting, which is kind of like an assembly that happens every single day to start off the school day. And I was part of their tech team, so I did all the technology for the whole program. And then slowly, I actually took over the whole content part of it. And it wasn't just a place for announcements. It was really, as like the dean of students used to say, it was a place for you to bring your soul, and what that means is sharing. Each person actually got a chance during their like high school to at least share one time in front of the whole school why, like something about themselves, something that really brings themselves into the space. And it really allowed me being part of Morning Meeting and like being in that area to like make change, and also just being a person who could talk and share my soul, right? At Morning Meeting, it allowed me to kind of call Vistamar my second home and kind of make it my place that I could trust and rely on.
Yeah, it's great. So you talked a little bit about sort of starting, to take some of the basic classes early on in your high school career, moving into some more rigorous classes, and then really sort of pushing yourself towards the end to take some of the more demanding, in this case, advanced placement level classes, and then even sort of rounding that out with some additional academic contributions. What was some of the best practices, or what were some of the best practices that worked for you in terms of juggling this academic course load? And then what would you advise other students who may be dealing with some similar demands? I mean, for me then and even now, the most important thing is a to-do list, and it needs to be a written to-do list. It can't be one of those online ones. I need to have a half sheet of paper. I always have one with me when I'm doing my work, and I just write my list of things to do and I cross it out, because I think I thoroughly enjoy crossing things out. It just makes me really happy. So that's just the way I was able to time manage. And at the same time, also, whatever I did in high school and whatever I do now, I try to make sure that I'm doing it because I love it, and that's what's kind of allowed me to do all the things I'm able to do. That's great. So let's talk a little bit now about the other dimension of high school, which is all of the extracurriculars. Tell us a little bit about some of the things that, took up your time and took up your mind share outside of the classroom. Yeah, so I started 2 businesses in 7th grade and in 9th grade. One was called Guardian Locket. It started off at a hackathon where I built an app that if you press the button once, it'll send a false phone call to your phone. And if you press it twice, it'll send 3 consecutive text messages to your top 3 emergency contacts and the police. And that sprouted out of 2 main ideas. One was the fact that I was surrounded by business growing up. Ever since I was a little kid, I saw my dad, who was a first generation immigrant from India, and my grandfather on my mom's side, who also was an immigrant from Pakistan. And I saw them growing up and starting their own businesses from nothing
and working hard and persevering and having that work ethic to make a living for themselves and their families. And I saw how much it took out of them, and I just saw that like I wanted to do that. So like that's how my initial kind of business stuff came from me. And then the second half, so I guess one of my friends from who I knew from college, she suffered sexual assault, which then made me realize like this was a bigger issue. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I started this business as well, to like kind of solve the problem. And the second one was started in 9th grade, and that's called Tech Ninja. And basically it's a connection with senior homes. We work with senior homes, and we built a subscription-based model where we kind of teach seniors how to use technology through the senior homes. And the whole purpose of that is to bridge the technical divide amongst the seniors and allow them to access so much more of the world. And the reason why I started this one was because every time I would go to my grandma's house or my grandpa's house, the first thing they would tell me is, before even saying Yali Madad or hello, they'd be like, why is my Ring doorbell not working? Can you please fix it? Or my WhatsApp text messages are not connecting to my phone. I don't know how I can send my cameras to my friends in Pakistan. Or can you fix the printer, right? And I realized that I love doing that for them, not just because it was a time for me to spend time with them and for me to help them out in a way that like since they've helped me out in so many ways and helped me grow up, it was also for me a time where I could sit and listen to their stories. And even today, when I'm helping out different seniors, I can definitely like me sitting there helping them. I'm also gaining so much knowledge from their expertise and their learnings in different ways because I'm listening to their stories.
Yeah, this is fantastic, right? So this idea as an entrepreneur that you were looking for problems to solve. I mean, you had some of the drive around, being exposed to businesses and others who had started their own businesses, but really looking for a problem within your community or within society that you wanted to address. What was, I mean, in 7th grade or in 9th grade, and sort of in, you can talk about both experiences, but what was that motivation to sort of, raise your hand and say, yes, this is something I want to do or something I can do versus, everything else that was probably occupying your time at those stages in life?
I mean, I think, like I said, it came back to passion, and again, like I was a young kid, I would always go to my dad's work or my grandpa's office, and I would just go sit there and they would keep me busy, like whether it was pretending that I was important, highlighting different things on their sheets or whatever it was. But it gave me that kind of thing like, oh, I'm doing something. I'm helping my dad out. I'm helping my grandfather out, And it gave me that, like, I can do whatever I want and I can start my own business if I want to do it. And that I guess was my motivation to kind of push myself to start something when I saw a problem that like the world was facing.
Got it. And from these experiences, it sounds like these ventures definitely continued, right? These startups continued for a period of time. So in these experiences, what would you say are the things that you learned, either hard skills or soft skills, things that you've sort of taken away from those journeys?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much you can learn from business, especially like the soft skills, anything from public speaking to learning about patents, what a poor man's patent is, how it works, communicating with people. The art of diplomacy is so important, and I'm still learning that, but like that's such an important part of business communication. Writing, surprisingly, writing emails is so important. I hate writing, but the only reason why I still write to this day, or why I stay up to date in like writing classes and making sure that I understand how the English works and how to make sure that I have a command of the language, is because in email writing, it's so crucial that you understand how to address concisely and clearly your expectations and communicate with one another, because emails are such a really powerful part of business.
Got it. So if we've got students on this Zoom chat, in middle school or in high school, who may be interested in doing something or starting a venture of their own, what advice do you have for them about how they might go about pursuing that?
The biggest thing I can say is kind of go around the world asking questions, trying to find things that bug you a little bit and try to solve them. Like it could be anything as simple as, why do your headphones get tangled? How do you untangle headphones because they're always getting tangled? Something simple like that, and try to find a solution to that, And then from there, ask questions. There's so many resources everywhere. I'm sure people can help you and guide you in a way like that I was guided, in a way that I could help guide. So many different ways you can kind of communicate with people and try to figure out from scratch.
Yeah, that's great. I think, oftentimes in society, even in our own community, our Ismaili community, we end up in this situation where we ask young children, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right. And it doesn't stop. Whether they're 5 years old or 15 years old or 35 years old, we'll ask them that question of what do you want to be when you grow up? And I think it's very critical to shift the conversation, just as you're saying, and ask them, what problems do you want to solve? Right? What problems do you see around you, either within the environments where you live or where you go to school or work, or your own personal needs, right? Problems or challenges that you see that you think you want to sort of raise your hand and try to solve them or address them, either with technology or through other means, right? So really great points. Let's talk a little bit about some of the other extracurriculars, because those were by no means the only two things that took up your time or your mind share. So what else did you get involved in during high school?
Yeah, so I was part of along with the school leadership councils that I was part of, like the open house committee, and the senior leadership council that planned the retreat. I was also part of two major councils outside of that. One called the Mayor's Youth Council of Los Angeles, where I was appointed to also put together an event for 300 people called Get Up and Dance to help people learn more about obesity, and specifically low-income people learning about obesity. And I did that through making sure we did kind of like a follow-along dance event where we had invited dancers from all across Los Angeles to come do a follow-along dance with all the attendees. And then we had a whole bunch of people around to help people sign up to like healthy food, healthy living, healthy lifestyle types of programs, which was a great success. And then the other leadership council I was part of was called MAGIC, Muslims and Jews Interfaith Change Council. And the whole purpose of this council was to create discourse between Muslims and Jews and find the similarities, and instead of like creating conflict and not understanding these two people, work together to build friendships, and understand that there's so much in common with the two religions. Let's work together. And it was not just about creating discourse within ourselves, but also creating discourse in greater Los Angeles area. So putting together events and to bringing people together to really foster this learning and this these conversations. I also went to Global Encounters, Camp Mosaic, and Legacy, and I also spent a lot of my time during the school year with Aga Khan Foundation. I raised, I think, starting in 3rd grade all the way till now, I've raised $70,000 with AKF, and now I'm part of their regional team to help them with their walks and their runs. And for fun, even though everything was fun for me, I was part of a dance team for Bollywood.
Got it. Oh, that's great. I mean, it sounds like everything I hear from high school students is that there's always a shortage of time. And I think now I understand why. It's because you're involved, your kind of peers are involved in so many different activities that span so many different interests, right? Academic, professional, social, and kind of within the community, outside of the community. So all great to hear. How do you sort of advise high school students who are either just getting into the phase where they're starting to look at extracurriculars, or who may be starting to narrow down their focus or their interests? What advice would you have for them as they think about sort of the time that they spend outside the classroom?
I think the biggest thing for me is, or when I was picking which extracurriculars to do and which extracurriculars not to do, it all came down to what do I enjoy? Like in middle school, in elementary school and early middle school, my mom had been like, try this out. Or I would go and I'd be like, oh, I'm interested in this. Let me try this out. And I ended up not being interested in it, And the things that stuck were the things that I were truly, truly passionate about. And I think that if you are in middle school right now, early middle school, or if you're in 10th or 11th grade, it's not too late. You can find the thing that you're like most passionate about, or the things that you're most passionate about, and try and do those extracurriculars, because that will really shine, and you'll be happy doing it.
Yeah, that's great. What about your summers? How were those spent?
Well, as my mom always says, our weekends are busier than our weekdays, and likewise, our summers are busier than our school semesters. So I was in no means chilling out, having a lot of fun in my summers. I was pretty busy either interning, or I went to Stanford for a coding class. I went to Global Encounters. I went to Legacy, Camp Mosaic, all of those. And I did like small projects with Jamaat Khana, whatever it may be. I was part of marching band. And I was also able to spend some time, interning at Teen Startup Academy, which was a 10-week boot camp for teaching students how to start their own businesses. So I was able to kind of be on the back end and kind of help them out and provide advice to future student entrepreneurs. And so, yeah.
That's great. So kind of, taking your experience from Guardian Locket and from Tech Ninja and sort of even, coming back and sort of sharing that knowledge and sharing those experiences back with those who may be also looking to do something similar or sort of be budding entrepreneurs themselves. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. We find ourselves now in this situation where many of us are sheltering in place and are looking to do so for the foreseeable future. While we have some states that are starting to reopen, for the most part, schools have effectively said that they are going to be via distance learning for the remainder of this semester. Most people are sort of spending a lot of time with their family, engaging in opportunities like this. What advice do you have for high school students to help them think about their time outside of their kind of academic responsibilities?
I mean, we've been given a gift, I think. We've had 8 weeks, that we've just kind of been given as like a pause. You do have a lot more time than you normally did because you're stuck at home, And I think that it's such an awesome time to do something, whatever it might be, whether it's skilling yourself up, learning how to code, or skilling yourself up, learning how to bake. It doesn't matter. Whatever you want to do, you have that time, and you still have a couple more weeks or maybe even more to skill yourself up. You also have time to make an impact. Do you want to start your own business? Do you want to do community service? Do you want to learn how to make a website? Whatever it is you want to do, you have the ability to do it, and you have the time now, right? So I think it's kind of a blessing that this has happened. You've been given an opportunity to do something more. So maybe use that opportunity and try.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think even in situations where students might have some academic challenges, right, to be able to use this time to get tutoring or to sort of reconnect with teachers or sort of others in our community. Education Board is actually offering a number of tutoring type interaction points. And so to look to those resources to be able to strengthen some of the things that, may have been challenging during the academic year. So all good advice. So if I may just recap sort of this high school phase, you talked a lot about sort of pushing yourself and really sort of being productive and conscious of how you're spending your time. You also talked about, when you were spending time outside of the classroom, it was really driven by this idea of wanting to solve problems and sort of this learning curve that you enjoyed as a result of that, of those experiences. You talked about some of the activities that you did outside of the startups, which were things that, sort of gave you sort of joy or in many ways continue to foster the passions that you had and sort of simultaneously allowing you to decompress. Is that a fair summarization of high school?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about sort of the college planning process, which overlaps with high school, obviously, but it's a different mindset. It's a different way of thinking about some of the goals and outcomes that are desired. So, tell us a little bit about some of the things that you did when it came time for college planning in terms of visits to campuses, getting ready for the application, et cetera.
Yeah, so I think it all started kind of around in like 10th grade. With SAT prep at the end of 10th grade and college visits throughout 10th grade, mainly through all the AKEB college expedition programs. I did a lot of CEWs, both NorCal and SoCal. I did CE, NY, CE, Boston, all of them. And it gave me an opportunity to kind of learn about the different schools and build my ideal school. And while I was doing that in early 11th grade and second semester 11th grade as well, I took the SAT. I also did a lot of research with colleges. And I think I researched like on this huge, massive spreadsheet, 50 colleges, not by myself, of course. I had my younger cousin actually helped me with my research, but we created this massive spreadsheet with 50 colleges. We ranked them based on like reach, likely, dream, different things like that, but then also like what I wanted the most. And all the columns were not the normal columns. Of course, we had like where it was located, but we also had like what season, like is it a very seasonal school? Does it have snow? Is it nearby a Jamaat? Kind of things that I thought were really important to me. And then from there, I started narrowing it down. And with the college visits and with the researching of colleges that I was doing, I was able to kind of build my dream school. And from there, in 11th grade summer, I started narrowing down my list. And I narrowed it. It was also the year that I was going to GE over my summer of 11th grade, which meant that I needed to start my applications a little bit early. So I started in June. I wrote my personal statement in June, went to GE, and then when I came back in August, I started writing my personal statement, and then school started. So then I wrote my supplemental essays and did my interview prep. And then after, on January 1st, 2019, I submitted my last application, and then I relaxed. Second semester senior year was it was so much fun because I was able to kind of finish my work strong, finish my school strong, but also make a lot of new friends still in high school and end high school on like a good note.
Yeah, that's great. So you touched on a couple of things. You talked about sort of starting early and this notion of everything from identifying schools to researching them to prioritizing them, then to moving into the actual applications and the essays. It's a long journey, right? And it's not something you can wake up and do during Thanksgiving break of your senior year. So really starting early, making sure you've spent the time to get to know the schools. You talked a little bit about the criteria as well, and it's something that we definitely encourage students and families to think about is sort of what's important to you, right? What are the things that you look for in a school? Because then that will help you start to narrow it down, especially as you think about which schools you will be submitting applications for. So really good points. You also talked about College Expedition, which unfortunately, did not take place this spring for obvious reasons, but there are a number of resources that students can still use, right? We know a lot of universities that are offering virtual tours and sort of virtual interaction touch points that prospective students can use to learn about those schools and those environments. So the resources are by no means limited, especially in this day and age. So thank you for some of that. Talk a little bit about your sort of application as you submitted it and sort of what you think helped you set yourself apart from the other applicants in the application pool.
I mean, it's hard to answer that question, to be fairly honest, right? Because we're not inside the application reader's head. But I think every person grows up with a different set of experiences and a different set of perspectives. And those two different experiences and different perspectives creates a worldview, right? And I think my worldview comes from a place of visiting countries all across the world, having diverse perspectives from a business standpoint, from a religion standpoint. And I was able to kind of, I guess, explain that. And I think that's kind of what allowed me to stand out in my application process, my understanding of the world and how I can apply that to something as simple as math or English, right? And how my perspectives, my experiences will really benefit the classroom.
Yeah, so you talked about the different dimensions of who you are, right? Sort of your upbringing, the activities you were involved in, your academics, your passions, your interests, your morals, your ethics. It seems to be the case that you sort of really presented your full self, and you found different parts of the application to feature those different dimensions of who you are, so that collectively the admissions committee got to know Armaan Ismail. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, actually, one of my Ismaili friends was like, sat me down one day and she was like, okay, here, with a blank piece of paper, she drew a circle and she wrote Armaan, right? And she's like, okay, what are you? Who are you? Tell me, right? And we kind of drew like a word map and we kind of wrote everything that I was, and we started building buckets, and came down to 3 or 4 buckets. And from there, those 3 or 4 buckets were business, religion, community service, and dance, mainly, And from there, we made sure that every single application kind of checked off that box. So before I pressed submit on an application, we made sure that somewhere in the application it talked about religion, somewhere it talked about dance, somewhere it talked about community service, somewhere it talked about business, and that obviously didn't build the fullest picture of myself, but it built the closest picture I could get to explaining who I am to an admissions committee.
Yeah, that's great. I think one of the analogies that I use is that the application is like your 30-second Super Bowl commercial, right? You've got to be memorable during that short period of time that an admissions officer is reviewing your application. And sort of in doing so, you've got to ensure that you get every single piece of your background or your profile in front of him or her to be able to let them advocate for you during those committee discussions that are taking place. Talk to us a little bit about the family unit and how your family played a role in terms of the college planning process and the journey to college.
I mean, my family, I love them. They're so amazing. They helped me throughout all my life, and I don't know where I would be without them. But there's a little picture over there that kind of shows how my family was throughout this whole process. And I'm telling you, I'm not the one with the megahorn. But we had a conversation. My high school counselor actually gave me this idea. She was like, listen, have a straight conversation with your parents. Tell them that, do you want to spend the next 6 months arguing about college and like just talking about college? Or do you want to spend the last 6 months laughing, enjoying our times together before who knows when what's going to happen, right? Where I go to college. So we did that. We agreed upon like a day during the week or a couple of days during the week where we could have that conversation about college. And I provided them with updates. They gave me their feedback, and that's how we kind of went about it. I'm not saying that I didn't need nagging, because I definitely needed nagging just as much as the next person, but I didn't want it from my parents. I instead asked one of my Ismaili friends to be the one to keep me in check, make sure that I was doing everything I needed to do to stay on top of my schedule.
Got it. Okay. So sort of this best practice of, agreeing with other stakeholders, if you will, right? And saying, this is what we're going to sort of follow. Is everybody on board? And in your case, it was touching base once a week and talking about all things college related, whether it was, scholarships and financial aid, or sort of the research that you did, or the schools that you started to identify and kind of schools that started to percolate to the top of your list. But anything related to college was fair game, if I understand it correctly, during those conversations. And then the rest of the week was really all about other things that were happening in your lives, because obviously there were other things happening in your lives, right? Related to school or Jamaat Kana or just some other family related events and activities. Okay, that's helpful. So if I may just kind of summarize this college planning process, some of the things I heard, are sort of starting early, making sure you have enough of a runway to be able to spend the time to think about the criteria, think about the things that are important to you, to do the research on the schools that are hitting your radar or are of interest to you, and then starting to build this profile of who you are, right? What are the 2 or 3 or 4 things that make you who you are, and hopefully those things then allow you to stand apart from the rest of the applicant pool. And then thinking about how your family plays a role and how you engage them, obviously because they have a vested interest in this just as much as you do, and how you partner with them to get to some of the outcomes that you both collectively work on. Is that a fair summarization?
Definitely.
Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about Berkeley now, which is where you are attending school. And maybe we'll just start with an overarching perspective on the school. How would you describe the university, the academics, student life? What's sort of the general experience overall?
Yeah, I mean, so I think Berkeley is just unique in the fact that every single person at the school is just, I'm surrounded by people who I'm in awe by, whether it's my peers who have done incredible things, who make you feel like you don't deserve to be there, or whether it's your teachers. I just came from an econ final right now, who are taught by my econ professors are 2 husband and wife. The wife who worked during the Obama administration in the recession committee to help stop the recession, and the husband who was part of the IMF during the same time. Both of them teaching me intro to econ. How amazing is that, And there's so many resources that are provided by them that it's just phenomenal to be surrounded in that kind of environment. As for I go to a public university, a large public university with an undergrad population of, I don't know, around 35,000. And yeah, that means that I have taken a class that's 2,500 people, but that doesn't mean that it's not like, it's not it's not achievable, like the 2,500 people class, it's broken up into discussion sections that has 150 TAs on staff to make sure that every person gets the individual attention they need. You can go to the professor's office hours and he's in it for you just as much as any of the other 2,500 people, and he'll remember your name. And that's kind of like the environment that Berkeley is as a whole, right? There's a vast array of resources for you, probably even more than many private schools. However, they're not given to you. You have to go and take your initiative and go find them, go grab the resources so that you can bring them and use them to the best of your ability.
Got it. 2,500 students in one class. I mean, that's the size of a small liberal arts college, right? So again, the criteria becomes very important, is to say, what is important to you, right? Are you okay being in such a large environment? As you said, as the students progress through the second year and third year, those class sizes do become smaller because you're starting to take classes in your major. But freshman year, intro to econ or intro to psychology, it's a sizable class, right? And so being comfortable, being able to navigate those types of environments, and then to your point, being able to seize the opportunities when they're presented to you are critical things to think about, and the criteria really sort of helps you navigate that a bit more. Talk to us a little bit about some.
I don't want to scare anybody, 2,500 people. It was only one class. It was my intro to CS class. It makes sense. Most intro classes are around 300 to 400 people, so don't get too scared. But yeah, it was a pretty big classroom.
Yeah, and it's also indicative of the classes that are more popular, right? I mean, an intro to computer science, as you just mentioned, is going to be one that has a huge following at a school like Berkeley. And so, thinking about those classes as to sort of, being important offerings by the school as well, because so many students are interested in that. So yeah, good point. Tell us a little bit about some of your extracurriculars at Berkeley. What are the things that you're doing outside of class?
Yeah, so I'm part of a couple of clubs on campus, one of them called 180 Degrees Consulting. We're a social impact consulting club that focuses on providing consulting services to nonprofits and for-profit Fortune 500 companies under their CSR division. And our goal is to provide high quality consulting services pro bono so that these businesses can kind of increase their social impact and make a difference. I'm also part of a leadership organization called Ascend, which focuses on providing leadership to people of Pan-Asian descent and giving opportunities on all aspects. And then lastly, I'm part of a Haas Business School Association, which is the student government on campus for the Haas School of Business, under their Student Affairs Committee. I'm also part of a community service program called the Berkeley Project.
That's great. So again, no shortage of activities here on your list, and I'm sure kind of the list making and sort of the time management are continuing to play a pivotal role so that you don't fall behind either on the academic side or the extracurricular side, right? What advice do you have for students, as they start to think about the next phase of their lives, beyond high school when they move into college? What advice would you give them about identifying and then sort of focusing on extracurriculars? And I guess that could apply to high school as well as to college.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a big difference in college versus in high school on clubs. And personally, I think in college, clubs are equally as important as academic classes because they provide you that real world experience that you might not be getting in your classes, right? Like my consulting club has allowed me to learn consulting, which I had never really learned previously, while also doing good for humanity, right? Like helping businesses really make an impact through my own learning, through my own skills. And I'm able to meet new people, network, and clubs are just as rigorous as well. Like 180 takes 10 hours a week from me, so it's no easy task, but it's also really impactful and really helpful for me to learn these different tangible soft skills.
That's great. There's a question that came through the chat about the types of resources that are available to you as a college student at Berkeley or kind of in other places that you may have heard of, where the schools are really there to ensure your success academically as well as kind of outside of the classroom. So what things is Berkeley offering students there to make sure that in a sea of 300 students in a class, or intro to CS 2,500, how are the schools kind of making sure that you're successful, that you're getting everything you need out of those academic experiences?
Yeah, so like I said, intro to CS is a perfect example, right? You have a 2,500 person class and one professor, right? But the school provides 150 GSIs, graduate student instructors, or teachers assistants, who break the class up into much smaller sections of 15 to 20. You have 2-hour labs and 2-hour discussions to make sure that each person has the resources. There's clubs on campus called CS mentors, which provide like even smaller group tutoring sessions of 6 people if you need extra help. And even further, there's another special class on campus called CS 370, where tutors are taught how to teach computer science. And then you can ask for individual one-on-one tutoring from these tutors as well. So the vast amount of resources, and this is just CS, right? This is just one class in CS. There's a significant amount of resources to make sure that you can succeed academically in your classes at Berkeley or at any public school or at any private school, because you're there to learn and the teachers are there to teach and help you, and everybody has the same goal in mind, so we make sure that at least people make sure that everybody has the right resources for that.
Yeah. Okay. Great. You've got a picture here of San Francisco. So tell us a little bit about, when you're not in the classroom, when you're not involved in these extracurriculars, what are you doing to sort of connect with the broader community, with the Jamaat? From our previous conversations, you've mentioned that Jamaat kind of plays a pivotal role, even in your life as a college student. So what are some of those things that you're doing outside of the classroom and the extracurricular space to continue to explore and to grow?
Yeah, I mean, the fun part of Berkeley, right? Jamaat Khana is, like you said, a very important part still of my life. I try to go to Jamaat Khana at least every Friday. And also I meet new people. I'm teaching in REC too. But as for San Francisco, I've gone at least a couple times into the city, and I've explored with my friends, and it's been a blast. Going to game days are a lot of fun. The football, Cal football thing on the bottom left-hand corner. And then case competitions have been fun. I mean, I know that doesn't sound too fun, but it really is. But also, I think it's like college has been one of the best places in my life to make friends. And I've made so many close friends and spent so much time up until late at night just talking with people and learning from them, because everybody is so intriguing, and everybody has their own diverse experiences that brought them to Berkeley, which are so cool to learn from and just hanging out with these people.
Yeah, that's great. So Armaan, we're all human, right? We're fallible. We face challenges and difficulties of different kinds in each of our lives. Talk to us a little about a setback or a challenge that you experienced and how you navigated that.
Yeah, a perfect example is when I came to school, I was kind of like, I was content. I was like, okay, I'm going to apply to clubs. I'm going to apply to consulting clubs, and I'll be the cream of the crop, and I'll be able to pick and choose which consulting club I want to go to, so I applied to 16 consulting clubs, expecting to get into at least half of them, right? So that I could have my pick and choosing. I applied in the first week of school, and then I got 15 rejection letters, and what that kind of showed me was that I am not the cream of the crop. I'm in fact on the lowest on the totem pole. I'm the lower 10% of the school. And that really put it into perspective. I have so much learning to do, and it really made me push harder, try harder. There's so much to learn, so much to do, and it's up to me if I want to make that difference, if I want to be part of a consulting club, if I want to be part of different organizations. I have to put in the work. I have to skill myself up so that I'm able to achieve the level of work needed like other people are.
It's a good point. And you started to suggest something right at the beginning where you were saying that, you're bottom of the totem pole. I think, for a lot of individuals, they deal with what is now called imposter syndrome, right? It's this idea that I might not be good enough, or I don't deserve this A, or how did I get such a great ACT score? I'm not smart enough. And I think in many cases, those individuals or those students have to just embrace the outcomes, right? It's, in your case, you were accepted into Berkeley, you have the opportunity to study there, in whatever other cases other students may be in, but sort of, try to realize what you're doing and sort of what you're saying to yourself is really what's being labeled as imposter syndrome, right? But you very quickly, rather than dwelling on that, you very quickly talked about the opportunity that sits in front of you, the ability to sort of learn and grow and to sort of, take that challenge or take that setback with a bit of resilience and a bit of grit, and to sort of say, this is how I'm going to push forward. So I really appreciate that. One more question, and then we'll switch over to the chat box for other Q&A. On a few occasions during the recent Diamond Jubilee, Maulana Hajramam has touched on the purpose of education. So I'd love to hear, what you would say is the purpose of your education, and what you might feel today, could be very different from 5 years from now or 10 years from now if you're still pursuing some sort of academic opportunities. But, at the present time, May 11th, 2020, what would you say is the purpose of your education?
I think I've said this like a little bit at the beginning, the idea that like everything I do is for a purpose, and I want to make sure that I'm making myself the best I can be and learning the most I can learn so that I can go out into the world and make an impact and leave a legacy for myself, but also at the end of the day, give back, and so many people in the world have helped me in so many different capacities. And in a couple of years, it'll be my turn to go and do that giving back. I've taken in all this knowledge, and now hopefully like this education will do something, allow me to make something happen, and then allow me to share with others what I've learned from my experiences. And I think that's kind of my hope that education will take me.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so there's a question here in the chat box about what do you think was the hardest part of your freshman year? And I'm assuming that's freshman year of college. So what would you say has been sort of the most difficult or kind of the most challenging thing, either from a transition standpoint, from a workload standpoint, sort of connecting with the community or with family? What would you say?
Yeah, I'll give two, and they're both actually polar opposites in sorts, right? One, academically, the course load, it looks like you're only taking 4 classes and you're barely in school, right? Like 4 classes, what is that, 3 times a week, that's nothing. But I'm telling you, the course load in college is so different than the course load in high school, and it's very challenging and very rigorous. And that definitely took a lot to get used to, and I'm still getting used to it. But I'm slowly getting a handle on it. And the second is socially. Thankfully, I have a really close group of friends that I made when I was first starting college, but I know that's a struggle. But for me, I lived in a home where everything was planned out, and there was a time to eat, there was a time to go to bed, there was a time for everything. Where now I'm in college and I have 24 hours of freedom, right? And that causes a lot of struggles, right? Like now I can stay up till or at least not go to sleep, and find times to do whatever I want. And that's a pro and a con, right? It forces me to push my time management even more, create that to-do list and follow it even more. But it also allows me to explore as well. I'm able to go hang out with friends. I'm able to do my work. I'm able to do both at my own choosing, which is nice.
Yeah. You mentioned the lists again, and you talked a little bit about sort of, using a paper and pencil or a paper and pen to make a physical list. Did you try other things before you sort of landed on this as being the thing that works best for you? Did you use any other software or other sort of methods of managing your activities and tasks?
Yeah, there's so many, even just the Notes app, or Google Notes is a really good one. Google Keep, that's what it's called. I really like Google Keep. But I don't know, I just always end up going back to my paper and pencil list, just because I can just cross things out. And for me, that's what helps me. But for other people, that might not be it.
Okay, fair. There's a question in the chat box about spending time on activities related to social media or Netflix. Any of those things that occupied your time during middle and high school? And if so, how did you manage that or navigate that?
I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I spent a lot of time on Netflix. And I still spend a lot of time on Netflix. And sometimes, like right now, for the past week and for the next week, I've deleted Netflix from my phone because I know that is the end of me in terms of not studying. But it goes back to time management. And at the end of the day, and we talked about this a little bit when we were talking about college planning, but you are the person who's going to college. You are the person who is going to high school. You are the person who's going to middle school, and it's up to you to make your conscious decisions about how you're going to go about learning, right? And if you feel like you can spend 5-6 hours a day on social media and still get A's, great. All power to you. That's not how I work. I'm not like, for me personally, I'm not the smartest person in the room, right? But it takes me a long time to get to be a person who can communicate with the smartest person in the room, right? And in order for me to do that, I have to study, I have to put in the time. And that means not spending as much time on Netflix, not spending as much time on Instagram, right? So you just have to figure it out, and you just have to play it out. Like right now, I know it's finals time for me, so I've decided no Netflix for me. But that might work for other people. It's up to you.
Yeah, well, that's great. I know we're at the hour, so I think we got most of the questions that have come through that are of general nature. There's a couple of specific questions that we can definitely follow up after the session here. Armaan, I want to give you a couple moments just before we wrap to share any parting thoughts or sort of pearls of wisdom that you'd like to leave with our students and family.
Yeah. So I have 4 pearls of wisdom, I guess. The first one is being yourself. Like I said, it's really important to make conscious choices about what you're doing in school, out of school, at home, and following your passions, right? And I know that sounds a little cheesy, and I guess all of these are a little bit cheesy, but I think it's really important that you stand by what you believe in, and do what you feel most passionate about, because that's what's going to show, that's what's going to highlight, and you're going to have the most fun doing that. The second is do your research. It is so important for you to do college visits and for you to make a robust list of colleges that you're looking at, because even if you don't go to the college that you're visiting, like you don't want to go to the college that you're visiting, at least it allows you to feel what kind of atmosphere do you like. Do you like a suburban atmosphere? Do you like an urban atmosphere? Do you like a college with 4 seasons? Do you like a college with an engineering program or a writing program? What type of things that you like? And you can slowly build your perfect college. And then from there, you can start putting colleges that are similar to your perfect college on your list. The next thing is asking questions and asking for help. I know I was really shy at first, and I didn't want to ask for help because I thought I could do everything by myself. But it's really important to ask for help, especially in the Ismaili community, because there's so many resources that are out there for you, and you can really use them and help yourself skill up. Because it's not just about your work, and like there's so many people who have done this before, and they're all willing to help you. So use that. And lastly, make the most of your high school experience. I know I talked a lot about like starting early, and it is important to start early, but it's also really important that you make the most of your high school experience, because you only get one of it. And I know that if I were to go back to high school, I'd want to spend more time with my friends, and make more of those lifelong connections, so enjoy your high school experience.
Yeah, thank you so much, Armaan. And with that, you put these into buckets, and as a future consultant, inshallah, I think you're thinking about things the right way, because as a former consultant, we do think very much in bucket form. So appreciate you organizing your thoughts and your wisdom. What we also would like to do here is just sort of give all of you who are listening a little bit of homework, right? This is just a way for us to start a conversation. In this situation, Armaan has shared a little bit about his experiences and some of the things that he has done that have allowed him to be successful in his own way. The goal here is not to duplicate everything that Armaan has done, but to sort of learn from his experiences and to gain some inspiration. And so for those of you who are listening to this, we encourage you to continue the conversation with your families. to sort of talk about the things that you may have learned. And we've laid out a couple of questions just for your benefit, and we'll share these via email after this session. But a few things that you can start to think about and reflect on is, what might you do differently at this point after hearing some of the things that Armaan experienced during high school, and even some of the things that he shared from his college experience? What are things that you might be doing differently now, or that you could consider doing differently? In addition to that, where do you feel there are gaps in your middle school or high school experience, either academic or extracurriculars? And what can we do, or what can you all do during this time, during this downtime that we have, to be able to start to bridge some of those gaps or fill some of those gaps? In addition to that, how can you use this time to think about the communities around you, either through the Jamaat or through your school or your neighborhood? And also, how do you use this time to get a little bit of a head start when it comes to college planning? And as you think about college planning, what are the things that are important to you? What are the things that will be critical for you to have a great college experience? We heard about the caliber of professors. We heard about the types of extracurriculars that are offered. We heard a little bit about the size of the class and the size of the school, and how that has an impact on one's experience. So things that you all can start to think about as you determine what's critical to you and what's important for you on this sort of next phase of the journey. Just a couple of housekeeping matters before we wrap up here. For those of you who may be interested, we have one more episode as part of the Spring 2020 series. Next Monday, we'll have Insha Maknogia joining us. She is a student at Vanderbilt University, and she'll talk a little bep about her experiences in high school and in college thus far. If you are interested, you can register at tinyurl.com/springep3. That's tinyurl.com/springep3. Additionally, if you know a college student who you feel would be great for a future Luminaries episode, you're more than welcome to submit a nomination for that student. The website that you can, where you can do that, is tinyurl.com/Apollo nomination. Again, that's tinyurl.com/Apollo nomination. And if you are a current 11th grade student or a rising senior, and you are looking to get started on your college planning process, or you've already started and you're looking to get some support, we have a fantastic program called Apollo 12, which is currently active. And so you can sign up for that, and we'll provide you a number of resources and a ton of advice and support so that you can get everything you need to submit your college applications. And so if you are a rising 12th grader, you can apply at tinyurl.com/Apollo advising. In conclusion, Armaan, we'd like to thank you for your time and the wisdom that you've shared with us. We would also like to thank each of the participants for carving out time this evening to join us. We hope you take away a few thoughts and a few sort of pieces of inspiration here from this session. And we look forward to our next discussion next Monday with Insha Maknogia. We hope you all stay safe and stay healthy. Yali Madad.